Hi guys, what's up? Red Sky here, bringing you my first top 10 video. In this video, we will see who was the biggest traitor in history. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Without further ado, let's get into it. Top 10 traitors in history. Number 10. Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was part of a revolutionary group of Roman Catholics who plotted to blow up most of England's aristocracy in 1605. The infamous gunpowder plot was foiled by authorities who caught Fawkes before he could carry out his murderous intentions. He was apprehended due to his attire of cloak, boots and spurs, a suspicious costume designed to ensure a quick getaway. Fawkes and his colleagues worked hard at their plot, using a cellar under the House of Lords as their base and hiding over 1,800 pounds of explosives in the small space. Fawkes and his co-conspirators wished to loosen the influence of the Spanish kingdom on British affairs, feeling that they drained resources from England. Guy Fawkes believed in his ideals, and he didn't break, even under torture, refusing to name his comrades until he was sure they had already confessed. He was sentenced to be hung, drawn, and quartered in 1606, but foiled authorities again by jumping from the scaffold to his demise at the last minute. Even in death, he was crafty and mischievous. His story is referenced in the film V for Vendetta. To this day, the rebellious acts of Guy Fawkes are legendary, and the English have a special event each year, Bonfire Night, every 5th of November. It celebrates the failure of his notorious plot. Number 9. Robert Hensen. Hensen grew up in a dysfunctional home, suffering abuse at the hands of his father. He started a career as a police officer in Chicago, but left to pursue employment as a FBI special agent in 1976. Hensen had strange proclivities. His interest in videotaping his sexual activities with his own wife and showing them to neighbors put him well outside the mainstream. In 1979, he became involved with FBI counterintelligence, and this paved the way for some of the most treacherous acts in American history. In 1983, Hensen transferred to the Soviet espionage unit within the FBI. Using his vast knowledge of computers, wiretapping, and electronic surveillance, he went on to sell lists of FBI double agents and other most to KGB agents for large sums of money. Hensen was turned in to the FBI by his own brother-in-law, Mike Hawk. He is currently serving a life sentence in solitary confinement at ADX Florence, a supermax facility in Colorado. Number 8. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda grew up as a Hollywood royalty, surrounded by luxury and privilege. After an easy entry into the acting world, greased by family connections and her own good looks, Jane became a passionate activist, involving herself in causes that were controversial and, in the eyes of many American veterans of the Vietnam War, highly treacherous. Jane, or Hanoi, sympathized with the North Vietnamese, even posing with their anti-aircraft guns and questioning American POWs about the benevolent treatment they were receiving from their captors. The soldiers tried to explain to Fonda that they were in fact being ill-treated and sometimes tortured, but she didn't believe it. Some soldiers claim they withstood more torture and suffered because they would not speak to Jane and parrot the viewpoint that their captors were kind and peaceful. Many veterans tried to bring Jane Fonda up on charges of treason after the war, but as some rich and famous people tend to do, she managed to escape any real punishment for her role in supporting the enemy during the Vietnam conflict. She says now that she regrets her acts, but veterans of that conflict have yet to forgive Hanoi Jane for her easy embrace of the enemy. Number 7. Brutus. Julius Caesar, self-appointed dictator for life of the Roman Empire, was a leader whose tyranny led to his assassination. He had many enemies in high places, including a group of senators who conspired to kill him with the help of his own nephew, Marcus Julius Brutus. Brutus joined the Senate in Rome after an early and very lucrative career as a moneylender. On the day of Caesar's assassination, there were rumors that the plot had been discovered, and many of the conspirators were wary of carrying out the plan. Brutus's own wife pleaded with him to stay far away from the Senate that day. Brutus was undaunted, and he went to lie in wait for his uncle, along with a group of senators who then attacked the dictator with their bare hands. The famous quote, "Et tu, Brutus," was uttered by Caesar as he took in the depths of his betrayal by his own nephew. The assassins attacked Julius Caesar so savagely that they themselves were injured in the melee. Brutus committed suicide after losing the Second Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. Number 6. Wang Jingwei. Considered the greatest traitor in Chinese history, Wang Jingwei was born in 1886. When he turned 21, he went to school in Japan, where he encountered Sun Yat-sen, a famous Chinese revolutionary. Under the influence of Sen, he began to participate in plots against the government, including an abortive assassination attempt on the Manchu regent in Beijing. Yang stayed in prison until the Wuchang uprising in 1911. After that time, Sun remained his mentor. Sun Yat-sen's Gundong's government rose to power in 1920. When Sun lay on his deathbed in 1925, Wang was his chosen successor. Wang could not hold on to power, however. Jiang Jingxi's military faction usurped him the very same year. When Nanjing fell to the Japanese in 1937, Wang became his traitorous dealings with the Japanese government, earning his place in history. He supported Japan's plan for an armistice in a notorious telegram that led to his expulsion from the government. When China was in crisis and needed him most, Jingwei took pains to ally with the Japanese and go along with its invaders. Wang died before he could witness the defeat of the Japanese by Allied forces in World War II. Number 5. The Rosenbergs. Selling atomic secrets to the Russians during the Cold War is about as treacherous as it gets. The Rosenbergs were a married couple willing to do anything to further their communist beliefs. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were affiliated with the Communist Party quite openly until 1943, when they suddenly seemed to retreat from any political activity. This was the same year they joined forces with the Soviet super spy, Felixov. From then on, Julius Rosenberg was heavily involved in espionage against the American government. He acted as a mule for covert information exchanges with the Russians and sought out new recruits to betray and spy for the USSR. He was arrested as he shaved one morning in 1950. He and his wife Ethel were executed on June 19, 1953. Number 4. Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold was an American general who served the cause of the American Revolution until he decided to shift his alliance to the British. Born in Connecticut in January 1741, he came from a troubled background, where his family struggled to survive poverty and hardship. Always known as a troublemaking kid, he grew to become a prominent figure in the military, where he trained soldiers and planned out attacks. From an early start as a war hero and patriot, Arnold plotted to turn over the American fort at West Point, New York, to British forces during the American Revolution. His plot was unsuccessful, and he was driven to escape by sea under cover of darkness to Britain, where he was not welcomed with open arms. They too distrusted the man who would betray his own country so readily. He died in poverty in Canada in 1801. Number 3. Aldrich Ames. Ames entered the Soviet embassy in Washington in 1985 and offered to sell American secrets for one reason only: money. He was an alcoholic with a very expensive second wife, a woman named Rosario, who burned through his paychecks from the CIA with alarming frequency. In order to give the woman he loved the lifestyle she demanded, he was willing to do a lot of damage to the US government. By releasing the names of American spies and other counterintelligence information, he compromised over 100 United States military operations. Thanks to Aldrich, who earned about $4.6 million from his efforts, 10 Americans were executed because their covers were blown. In time, he revealed the names of every US agent in operation against the USSR. His lavish lifestyle raised red flags for the CIA, and he was arrested and convicted to life in prison. His wife, Rosaria, was deported to South America. Number 2. Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar was an ambitious leader under the Nawab of Bengal, Sir Siraj-ud-Daulah. In 1757, Robert Clive of the British East India Company made a deal with Mir Jafar. They agreed to hand over the Bengali army at the Battle of Plizy in exchange for control of the new puppet state. This new puppet state, with Mir Jafar as its Nawab, paid large bribes to the company and its officials. 2 years later, Mir Jafar realized that the British were after much more, total control of the Indian subcontinent. He attempted to ally with the Danish to stop them, but this only resulted in defeat and Mir Jafar being replaced. His replacement also attempted to stop British domination, but failed and he was deposed. Mir Jafar, having regained the graces of the British, was placed back on the throne until his death in 1765. Before we get to the number 1 spot, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Number 1. Judas Iscariot. According to the Bible, Satan entered Judas before he betrayed the Son of Christ to Roman authorities. This infamous member of the 12 apostles betrayed his friend for money alone, 30 pieces of silver. Judas arranged a special signal to let the authorities know the identity of Jesus Christ. He would kiss Jesus to identify him. This Judas kiss led to the prosecution and death by crucifixion of the Son of God, and puts Judas Iscariot at number 1 as the most notorious traitor in human history. Judas died shortly after his monumental act of greed.